Hello and welcome back. And do you know it's been more than a year since UnifI launched this, the UnifI Cloud Gateway, aka the UCG-Fiber. And just like a handful of different UnifI devices I've reviewed here on the channel, I wanted to fast forward to now and talk about 1 year of this device. Now, full disclosure out the gate, I have not actually been using this every single day for the better part of a year. In fact, on aggregate, I've probably knocked up about 7 to 8 months of it. So this video is my own experiences, but also those I found online. And the other thing I'm going to highlight is, link below, there is a phenomenal Serve the Home review where they reviewed this device completely independently of UnifI, and they go into a lot more detail about some of the internals. Again, strongly recommend you check that out because it does go into some of the nitty gritty there in the background and the way some of those controllers working alongside the ports are broken down. But if you're not really in this for the more technical stuff and you just want to know right now if the UCG-Fiber is a great gateway for you, I recommend you check that out. And also, if you did watch my review last year and you were one of the raw 8,000 people that corrected me about me saying this is not a router device, hands in the air, you were right, I was wrong, my God, the baptism of fire. Every day's a school day. But from now on, let's go on to 4 reasons why I recommend this and 4 reasons why you might want to sit on the fence or shop elsewhere. One year since my review of this, I'll say right now, the price held up, man. This thing rocked out at $279, and right now, 1 year later, it is still $279. Before we even get into what that gets you these days in terms of hardware, I'll say right now, $279 for this, when it arrives with, alongside the CPU quad-core ARM A7 III, just like a number of their other devices, it's got 3 gig of RAM. Do you know what 3 gig of RAM costs in 2026? This thing's still at that $279 price point with 3 gig of RAM inside is really impressive when, frankly, Ubiquiti and a bunch of other brands that have already done this would have been forgiven to up the prices a little bit, given that the supply chain is completely screwed in terms of RAM. But alongside that, rocking out with 4 2.5 gig ports, 1 copper 10 gig port and 2 SFP. A year ago, I talked about just what great value this is. And right now, in July 2026, it is still bonkers value. Just putting that price into perspective, off camera, I'm still reviewing this device, the Flint 4 from GLI Net. I know UnifI will love it when you mention other brands in a video, but that thing is almost certainly going to be the same, if not more expensive than this from a year ago. Again, in 2026, it's just phenomenal value for this UnifI gateway. Now, realistically, if you come to this video looking at this 1 year later for the fiber, you're doing it because you've got 2 major questions. Number one, right now, 1 year on, is the brand still supporting this device? And on top of that, there are better options in the market. Now, I'm not going to talk about other offerings from other companies, because if you're buying a UnifI product, realistically, you've either locked in that eco or you're already considering it. The UnifI proposition is more than just the hardware, it's largely the software. And I will say software updates for this have been very regular. Now, in this video, I'm going to try to avoid giving this any praise that is more general to the whole of the UnifI ecosystem. I'll say that straight away. The zonal stuff, the new UnifI Fabric stuff, all of the great analytical bits and bobs, you're going to get that with any of the modern UnifI gateways and routers and even some of the layered switches. But you'll get that. But there has been targeted updates specifically for this device, some of which we'll talk about later on. But in terms of hardware offerings from the brand, I will say they haven't turned their back on it. They've not rocked out with a new version. And alongside similar products that have been launched over the time, there's been nothing at this value point. It's really come down to 3 different solutions that rocked out. Number one, there was the 5G model that could have a 5G SIM card inserted inside it there. It was a tower router model with the Wi-Fi connected on it and Wi-Fi 7. This device, of course, doesn't have Wi-Fi. And that rocked out, well, looking at my pricing there, $499. Now, this device, you can get the little 5G SIM adapter connected to it. I think that's like $99 or something crazy. On top of that, then you've got things like the industrial device. Why am I talking about it when I could just stick it on the table? This device rocking out at $579. So again, hugely increased in price. Very similar, I would argue. It's basically, this device is an industrial equivalent of this, taking advantage of heat dissipation, also Wi-Fi connectivity, and it's got the 5G SIM failover to a point. But again, that has not abandoned the support of this by UnifI by any means. And then there's been kind of the Enterprise Fortress Gateway stuff, and of course the UnifI Beast Dream Machine there at $1,499. What I'm saying is there have been other products, but they've all rocked out at multiple times the price of this device, and UnifI has not suddenly gone, well, we've got these more expensive products, shall we just sack this off? They've not done that. This has continued to be supported in both in terms of software, availability of that hardware, and that price point. I think it would be fair to say that when this device launched over a year ago, it's had a similar fate to a number of quite cutting-edge devices that UnifI roll out. I think it'd be charitable to say that some users feel that UnifI have a tendency to get devices out the gate, perhaps before the software is as good as it can be, and then software revisions happen over time to improve upon it. This was no exception to that, frankly. There has, as I say, been updates to that software, but one of the issues a lot of users talked about early doors was the capabilities and stability and reliability of PPPoE, point-to-point protocol over Ethernet. Now that is another layer of security and management and authentication of the pass-through, the extra layer between your ISP and this device being utilized there. Now that required hardware utilization. It was one of the reasons people were buying this, because of the promised hardware acceleration that could be utilized inside this to get that job done better, because there is obviously a resource cost. Now 1 year later, that has seen significant improvement and was cited in a number of the updates. Now it still doesn't seem to be completely perfect, but it's way, way, way better than it was, to a point now where I'm more than happy to say that if you're considering buying this for that feature, it does deliver. Another thing at launch that suffered quite a lot of criticism from some early adopters was to do with the transceiver utilization on those 10G SFPs there, and just generally the broader support and compatibility of different SFPs, DACs, and just generally the gateways to take advantage of the dual fiber connection on this when you've got greater than fiber connectivity in your ISP coming in was not great at launch. I'm pleased to say that that is another area that has been improved upon in update. It's still not what I would consider universal support, but it's better than it was. And again, that isn't my own personal experience. It's reading reports online of people that have returned to this device during firmware updates and seen greater degree of compatibility via different transceivers there on the rear. So again, much like the support of some of the software services there, and indeed the software from UnifI running on this, it has seen notable improvements that continued work by the brand in that over 1 year period. But it ain't perfect. There does still seem to be some things that users are bothered by and being affected by with the utility of this device 1 year on. Alongside that, misunderstandings about what this device is capable of and who it's designed for still need to be addressed. So let's talk about 4 things about this device that could still do with a bit of work or are reason for you to remain on the fence rather than go for the fiber. Now this is an odd one, and arguably I reckon my review was one of several reviews that I think led this thing down a slight wrong path for some users, to be fair, and that is the number of users that are buying this device because it feels like it's got some serious switch capabilities. The reality is it doesn't. It does have those 3 10Gs and it's got the 4 2.5Gs. And in my original review, I remember recalling that this device, you could tap in the 10 gig NAS, take advantage of a great internet speed going into that 10 gig SFP port there, and still have another 10 gig to manage and connect another device. Now you can do that, but because of the internal chip arrangement on this, and this circles back, by the way, to that Serve the Home article, a big problem in that methodology is the way these are all laid out, with the 4 2.5 gig ports going into a Realtek controller, the copper 10 gig going into a Realtek controller, and the 2 10 gigs feeding directly into that ARM processor there. It means that theoretical maximums working in the middle can't be realized. And things like bonding these in order to fully saturate these 2.5 gigs, when you think, oh, there's 4 2.5s, that equals 10, it's actually not that sound in terms of that translating that bandwidth internally there, because you've got a few throttle points there. And therefore, the whole reason for me going down this road is just to say you shouldn't buy this instead of getting a gateway or router and a switch. This is definitely not something that you should be looking at as an alternative to buying both of those devices separately, because frankly, this, as good a gateway as this is, this needs to have a switch combined on the side rather than hoping it's going to do the job of both. Something I touched on my original video on this, but something I'm going to expand upon 1 year later, is to do with that M.2 slot. If you're not aware, this device allows you to add into it a lovely little U.2, slot that inside, and boom, you've added storage that you can take advantage of with the inclusive surveillance software Protect with this. Loads and loads of cameras, all running, all being managed by this internally, storing onto that drive. My original criticisms were largely about the fact that, you know, one drive, you've got no RAID failover, all of your surveillance data on one disk that could fail. But on top of that, you had to buy the tray separately. Now, yes, you can buy the storage drive directly from UnifI. And with that, when you get these drives, if you get the 2TB model, for example, it includes the tray, or you can just buy the tray separate and then stick your own drive inside. But it's really annoying to me that it doesn't include the tray inside. But again, $279, very competitive. My issue further on from that is those of you that consider to buy this device for that Protect software as a more inclusive, fully featured product should be aware that Protect is going to eat up that RAM. And although storage and indeed internal CPU hardware and network connectivity, looking at the wrong side, shouldn't be any kind of barrier surveillance on here, I will say running Protect on this will eat up that 3 gig of RAM. And the software updates that are rolling out on this, if you want to take advantage of all of them, and we'll return to this point later on, it means that as good as having that Protect software service on this is, you have to keep your expectations a little bit more realistic, despite that 3 gig of memory being included there. Because the overall software and services on this, even if you only use, you know, half of them to very tepid degrees, you're going to be eating up the RAM, and you want to make sure that Protect, running just a handful of cameras, isn't swallowing up more than half of that on its own. We got to talk about temps, because I'm not going to say this device cooks eggs. It doesn't. But I will say it gets warm. And by that I mean, even if you use the transceivers there, if you put a couple of transceivers in there, they don't necessarily have to be the RJ45 conversions. You've already got a copper on there. But if you stuck a couple of transceivers in there, you stuck an M.2 NVMe in there, you attach a PoE drive into that PoE Plus in there, whether it is a little hub switch or a camera, something like that. All of that airflow is managed by the fan inside and just these 2 little vents. And I'll say it right now, when you're looking at that architecture there and the vents all running through, there's not a huge amount of airflow potential there. Even in, I would say more so if you're putting it into a rack cabinet there with a couple of little handles there, maybe something's 3D printed. And saying, with this device, they clearly knew that airflow and cooling needed to be considered quite heavily, given that they've already moved the PSU outside. But if you're going to use the inclusive features there on a hardware level, and not just the software ones we touched on the previous point, be aware that this will get warm and that fan will kick in. This next point, again, doesn't come from me personally, but it's one that I have seen online, and it regards the 10 gig physical port there, aka port 5. If you look up the UnifI Cloud Gateway Fiber port 5, you'll find a few different complaints online about upload performance with this port. Now, this has been addressed in numerous updates from UnifI in the year plus that this has been around, specific to this device, I might add. So they have acknowledged that this is clearly something being reported online. However, I found a few different reports from a few months ago. Essentially, the majority of reports are saying that people are getting around 500 to 600 through there on a port that should be hitting 1,000. Now, again, without knowing more specifics about people's setups there and the nature of those updates, because they're not hugely addressed in UnifI's own pages, how much of this has been resolved and how much of it has just been improved but not really completely fixed is hard to say. But this port, I think most users would have been using for a connected switch, or they'd be using it for like a 10 gig NAS, because these SFPs with the transceiver is what you would be porting your great little ISP Big Johnny Big Bananas connection into. But just be aware that that copper port there are mixed reports online that the upload performance on that specific setups are having difficulties. But that's really it. 1 year on, this thing is still a banger in my eyes. And once you factor in the price tag, it's even better. And once you factor in all the updates from UnifI in that time, which once again have been applied to other UnifI products, so it's not exclusive to this, does make this at $279 a phenomenally attractive proposition in terms of value. Just keep your expectations very much grounded. And when you look at the full specs and abilities that are being reported on this device, keep in mind that if you try to run all of them at once, you're going to hit the odd kind of throttle, the odd kind of temperature. So be aware not to try and hit them all to the max at once. And once you see the maximums listed in the specifications on UnifI's own pages, be aware, and they're not alone in this, other brands do it as well, that when they list those maximums, they never refer to them as all being maximum at once. Any maximum performance threshold, any maximum spec threshold ceiling of any of those generally is built on the preface that you're only doing that. So just be aware of that, that 279 on the device of this scale and this compact nature does arrive with those glass ceilings between different apps and programs and services. But this has been the UCG 1 year later. If you found this video helpful, if you were going to buy this device anyway, and if you want to support what we do, make sure those three things are true, please use the links in the description to buy your UCG-Fiber. Doing so will result in a small commission. It costs you nothing extra, but we get a commission, just me and Eddie. It's just us doing this, and allows us to keep doing what we do, the reviews, the guides, the support, and more. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.